I'm Alex, I'm 21 and I come from Bedlington in southeast Northumberland. I would say the strongest childhood memories growing up in Bedlington was probably family time, because that was a very important part of my life growing up. I would say going down the woods, as they call it, in Bedlington along the river on this nice summer days, swimming in the river, having a barbecue, just seeing my family around that area, because it was quite a close-knit community, because it's quite cut off from places like Newcastle and surrounding areas. So it was normally like a lot of people that live in Bedlington itself don't make it out, like they don't, like they're born in Bedlington and then they live in Bedlington all their lives and then they die in Bedlington. So it's quite unheard of for someone to move out. It's fine if you want to move to like Ashington or Morpeth, which is like 5-10 minutes around about that away, but after that it's not really heard of for people to move out. I would say my social, growing up around like friends and stuff like that, I had friends, but I wasn't one of those popular kids in school, so I had quite a small friendship group. I had like more friends in first school and middle school, and then as I progressed to high school, I sort of, to be honest, bro, I didn't like high school at all, because I felt quite isolated. They just, I don't know, I think a lot of kids in high school, they change a lot. It's quite ruthless. So I never had that many friends in high school, and the friends that I did have, they were just the wrong sort of people that I wanted to associate myself with, like they were a bad influence. I used to go and play for a football team. I played football from when I was about 7 to when I was about 14, and after that I sort of just dropped a bit when I did like my GCSEs. And then I think in 2015 I joined the police cadets. So we did Duke of Edinburgh Award, the bronze and silver awards, and that taught me a lot about teamwork. It taught me a lot about how to, what like the adult world was going to be like, learning about the different parts of the police. But it was a really good opportunity. The interest in IT sort of started when in IT classes, playing games as well. So I like from like a young age, I've liked technology YouTubers, so like the unboxing videos, like tutorials on how to do certain stuff on computers. Like I was always the person in my family who was like, oh Alex, there's a problem with with my phone, can you come and fix it? Or if there's a problem with the laptop, can you come and fix it? And then that sort of interest grew and grew into something which I wanted to make a career out of. The influence that I had from religion from being a young age was very minimal. I can remember being in first school and praying and in assembly singing hymns, but I think that's more, you do it, but nobody explains why you're doing it. And then you'd go to church at Easter, Christmas time, but that wasn't my family influence in that. That was my teachers, and it was part of the curriculum. But I think the main point of it is that I didn't know why I was doing it, and that connection between God was never there because I never had any reason why I was doing it. An influence from my family, there wasn't really any. They were very non-religious. I think we went to church once at Christmas, but there was no really, it was just, oh, we'll go to church at Christmas. It's just something you do. But I never had anyone tell me like, my parents weren't religious, my grandparents weren't religious, nobody was. My first exposure to other religions, from what I can remember, was in year 6. We learned about Hinduism, Judaism, and Islam, and we actually went to on a school trip to one of the masjids in Newcastle. But I think the teaching then, you could tell the teachers weren't, not that they didn't want to teach us it, it was sort of, they didn't explain everything, the meaning behind it. We would go, and I can remember going into the masjid for the first time in year 6, and I was watching, the teachers told us to take off our shoes, which I thought was a bit strange at the time, and then just watch people pray. And we watched for an hour while people prayed. But none of the teachers explained this. So I think if they had explained it then, I would have grew a lot in my knowledge and maybe have reverted to Islam earlier, perhaps. What I normally identified religiously was being agnostic, because I didn't want to write it off totally and say that I'm an atheist. I didn't want to do that totally. I just wanted to, but I never pursued it. That was the problem. So when I started to look into different religions more was in high school. Well, obviously in RE, GCSE, because with being a Catholic school, we had to do RE as part of our GCSEs. So I started to look into religions then, but it wasn't for like getting into them. It was more learning for my exams and stuff like that. But seriously looking into religion was in work. That was because I had a few friends that were Muslim, and when they were fasting on Ramadan, they would always, like, obviously not eat, drink water, and I would always ask the normal non-Muslim questions like, why are you doing this? Are you not even drinking water? So yeah, that was, I used to ask a lot of those questions and get into a lot of those debates about Islam. So I would say a lot of the questions that I asked my Muslim friends in work were a lot more arrogant. I wasn't very open about the questions, but I think that's sometimes worse in some way, because they'll probably think worse of me. Like, what is he thinking about me? He's not being open with me about what he thinks. But a lot of the questions, some of it was arrogance, but some of it was interest as well. And I think it got to the point where it was sort of like arrogance at the start, and then it slowly changed into interest. How I started to really learn about Islam was, one, there was a sister that was part of that friendship group. She started the same time as me, and we were part of like a big friendship group. It was a mixture of different backgrounds, races. So she started to catch on that I was like interested in Islam, and then she brought loads of books in to work when we were all sitting in a big group, and then she gave me them, and it was books about how to pray. She brought me a Qur'an as well, and the different stories of the prophets. So that was just the start of it for me. My initial reaction was sort of, because everyone else was there, a lot of like non-Muslim, well, everyone was non-Muslim apart from a few other people in the group. So they were thinking like, what is this? And I was embarrassed a bit, but inside I was so pleased, because I had been interested in it for a while, but I didn't take that jump. The parts of the books that interested me was the stories of the prophets, especially because when you were reading through it, that message of Islam, the belief in one God, was conveyed throughout the whole book. So there's a group of people who are worshipping idols, and then the theme with all of the prophets is that they come in and they enforce the belief in one God and worshipping Allah alone, which is the foundations of Islam. And then looking at that, and then I thought, hang on a second, like, you've got like the Holy Trinity in Christianity. And then I started to research the comparisons between Christianity and Islam, because you sort of feel that natural defense, because you've grown up being a Christian. I was christened. That you sort of, even though it wasn't a part of your life then, it's still inside of you to defend that part of you, even though you didn't know why you were doing it. So I started to be like, oh, well, we've got like the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then Islam is just the belief in one God. But then I sort of had that knowledge from reading the Qur'an and reading the stories of the prophets. And then it sort of had that like light switch moment when it was like, I'm holding a miracle right here, which is the Qur'an. And a lot of people say like there's no proof of there being one God. But I looked and like the Qur'an is like the same everywhere in the world. You could just pick a copy up and then there wouldn't be a word that's changed in Arabic. I know that there's translations, but the words of Allah is the same throughout the whole of the world. And what I think is so beautiful is that you could destroy every single copy of the Qur'an and then people will be able to rewrite it word by word. I would say the story of the Prophet that caught my eye the most was the story of the Prophet Noah. So it was from being a child, you learn about the story of Noah's Ark and all of the animals, but you never really, from reading the Islamic perspective of it, it was very different, but it made a lot more sense because the way that it's portrayed in a lot of the Christian stories is that it's not as detailed and there's not enough reason as to why certain events happened, and a lot of it I feel is cut out from my perspective, from what I've read. So with Noah's son dying as well, when everyone else was on the ark, and then Noah tried to save him, but he couldn't be saved because he didn't worship Allah alone. And that same message of being one God, that wasn't explained in the Christian, obviously, in the Christian stories as well. When I decided to become Muslim was when I found myself researching every day, researching different words. So learning subhanallah, mashallah, alhamdulillah, inshallah. Words like Arabic phrases like that. I would wake up in the morning and then I would look out and then I would just say subhanallah. Like that was a turning point for me. It made me realize a lot. And before I had looked into Islam, I went through a very difficult part of my life with mental health. But alhamdulillah, I found Islam and it totally changed my way of looking at life. But I felt like when I was researching about Islam, I felt like this path was set out for me many years ago, and I was always meant to become Muslim. So how did I decide to take my Shahada? Was I came to the masjid and I asked the brothers if there was any organizations or anyone that could help me in my journey to Islam that would help better my knowledge more. Because I came to the masjid, but I know that there's always more information. There's more knowledge. Even now, there's more knowledge that I need to know. But they pointed me in the direction of the IDC, the Islamic Diversity Center. And I went, I knocked on the door, and I went up the stairs, and then I met Abu Taib, and then you, Lee, came in, and I can just remember everything was just so surreal that I thought I was the only one that was like this. I knew there was other reverts out there, but I never knew there was such a massive community of reverts there that when you walk through the door, all of my worries just started to calm down, because I knew that there was someone that came from a similar background to me, someone that came to Islam. So, and then you invited me to go to the masjid. So we came to the masjid, and then Muhammad Tim Humble was there. And then I just took my Shahada there with him, with Abdul Basit. My initial feeling with taking my Shahada, it was something that I had researched so much about beforehand. And being in that moment, it felt like I was a newborn baby. Like I knew this was a new start to my life, and I knew that I was on the right path for sure, because I used to get very down about, like the meaning of life, why are we on this earth? And a lot of these questions, they were just gone. My head was just, I was just content. It was just the elation of doing it as well was just unbelievable, subhanAllah. So since accepting Islam, I got invited to the Aqidah class with Abu Taib. I got invited to the New Muslim class with Richard. And those classes are very integral to the development of a new Muslim because they teach you how to pray, but they don't teach you just how to pray, they teach you your whole Islam, like your Aqidah, your foundation of your Islam, because if you don't have that foundation, then everything else will just collapse. So the things that I've learned since joining Islam was stuff like the Day of Judgment. That was a very big part of what I was learning about, because I think obviously this life is very small in comparison to the afterlife. So I think a lot of people are working towards that. Like, this life is so tiny when you read about it compared to the afterlife. Difficulties that I've faced since becoming Muslim is coming to the realization that your faith goes up and down, and realizing that that's a natural part of your Islam. Not everybody is on high all the time, because sometimes when you can look around different brothers and you look at lectures, it's like they never have a bad day. But I think it's learning how to deal with that. So gaining more knowledge, so you never, well, not never, but you sort of have a less chance of getting into that again. I think that's a really important part. The Iman is something that can be very low before you come to the masjid. And then when you come to the masjid, it can just give you a whole lease, a new lease of your Iman. It can go straight back up again. How my family reacted when I told them that I wanted to become Muslim was sort of, it's hard to describe. It was a lot of anger. And I think a lot of that anger was from not ignorance, especially. It was from not having the knowledge behind. So a lot of people just hear Muslim, and then think of all of the bad things that Muslims have done, which is a small percentage of what Muslims are. Like it says in the Qur'an that if you kill one person, it's like killing the whole of mankind. And if you save one person, it's like saving the whole of mankind. You can't hate that religion when it literally says that in the book that they abide by. But my parents, I explained this to my parents, and they just fired back more and more questions. But I wasn't that confident in my Islam that I could answer those questions very eloquently. So then it just got into a spiral of them getting angry at me. But then I would come to the IDC and I would talk to some of the brothers, and then a lot of the message they conveyed to me was patience. And they explained the importance of your parents. And they explained the different stories of the Prophet, peace be upon him, about how he mentioned your mother and how important she is. So I took on that advice and I kept patient. I kept on going back and trying to explain it more. There was times when it was difficult as well, but there was also times when you sort of felt like they were starting to come round, and then they would go back to asking really difficult questions, and then you would go and have to research that afterwards. But alhamdulillah, now they're totally fine with it. I would say anyone that's interested in Islam is, don't be afraid. But I would just urge you to research it. And before you make any conclusions, ask a Muslim first. Don't just go off what it says on the internet all the time. Come to a masjid, talk to an imam, talk to the brothers or the sisters, and just hear what they have to say, because 9 times out of 10 it's a lot different to what someone on the internet says about it. And then what they say is truthful. It's a lot more truthful. I would say for people that are Islamophobic, a lot of those people don't have a lot of Muslims in their life. But a lot of people that have Muslims in their life aren't Islamophobic typically, because they know them as people, they know that they're not bad people. And a lot of people are Islamophobic because they just switch to anger straight away because they don't know about something. And I would say for racism, acknowledging that, I'm just talking about like white people, is acknowledging that you have privilege. And it's acknowledging that we have privilege what other people don't. I think that's a very integral part of breaking that down as to why you have these thoughts, and then using that privilege to do something about it. Because a lot of people won't listen to people like people of colour because of their race as much as what a white person would talk about it. It's wrong, obviously, but that's the way the world is at the minute. I think my plans now is the same as what Brother Dale said, was to learn Arabic more. So I think I need to take more in the driving seat and learning more Arabic, because I read the Qur'an, but it's in an English translation. It's not the words of Allah. So I want to learn Arabic to know the exact meaning behind every single word of the Qur'an. I think that's very important. The biggest lesson that I've learned in my life was probably to be more appreciative. So appreciate what you've got around you, because none of that is permanent. And to appreciate more gives you more, like in hindsight, and less regret as well. So spend that time with the people that you need, that you should spend time with more, so you don't regret it afterwards if anything happens to them. And I think appreciate what you've got, like what Allah has given you. So how He's given you clothes to wear, how He's given you food to eat. It's not to get caught up in life, not to get caught up in work. And that's a big lesson, because I think it humbles yourself a lot.